Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Open Discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is
Cheryl.
And today we're talking about Vox Machina Season 2. It's on Amazon Prime. The complete season is done. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's a great show. Then come back and see what we have to say about it. But spoiler alert, so you have been warned. Let's go ahead and jump into it. I love this show, man. This show is so freaking good. So the end of the last season had the dragons attacking the city, and it starts up right off with that happening, and people are dying. The city is getting destroyed. The entire city just goes to hell quickly, and Vox Machina, they're able to escape, and then right after they escape, you think that they're gonna be fine, but then their house that they use as a haven also gets destroyed, and they quickly realize that these dragons are gonna be a problem, and we're gonna have to come back and figure out how to beat these dragons, but we also can't beat these dragons. And it ends up resulting in a season that I don't know if it's necessarily better than season one, but it's a season that gets to showcase a lot of the characters' backstories. Where season one was a lot about Percy, this season felt like the season to discover a lot about the other characters' backstories. I don't think there's a single character that gets left out. Like even Grog gets some some real serious like backstory and character growth, and it's freaking dope. So I just, man, and then on top of it, the action is always top notch for a show like this. The animation's on point. The characters are always great. It's great to see their interactions. And we'll talk about more specifics, but all the characters, or a lot of the characters, also get power-ups. Like in the first season, Percy was pretty strong with the demon that he had attached to him. And characters still did cool things, but certain characters like Vex felt kind of left behind. She felt like she wasn't as strong as the other characters because all she really had was her bow and arrow, and Trinket, but Trinket was barely in season one, too. So like she didn't feel like she was doing as much when it came to battle as like from a power level point of view, like some of the other characters like Keyleth and even Pike. Pike carries that freaking team on her back. Oh my gosh. But in season two, it doesn't go down like that. Everybody gets some sort of significant power up that kind of just makes them more of a force to be reckoned with. And if they don't get like an explicit power up through like a weapon or a vestige, they get some good backstory where you get to learn about them, and then they grow through that backstory, like Rock. Anyway, all right. So I'm gushing like a fangirl about this show. I am a fangirl. So anyway, Cheryl, let me kick it to you. What it like? Fox Market season 2. Where you at?
That's so funny. I was gonna say right before we started the show that I would have liked for you to carry the show today.
God, I hate you.
But no, I agree completely with what you've had to say. That's it for me. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
All right. End stream.
But no, I completely noticed that too. Like one of the things that I really liked about this season is like, well, first of all, it starts with like the end of season 1 with all these dragons, and you're like, oh shoot, and then like. And like at the beginning, it starts with that, and you're like, oh yeah, oh shoot. And then you're like, how are you, like, they had such a hard time killing one dragon in season 1. Are they gonna deal with this?
3.
And like I mean, it's such a good like setup for like what they're gonna do moving forward. I love that they like get to raid the shop. What's his name? The guy. But yeah, the shop. The basically they get like all kinds of free stuff, and I can just imagine like playing D&D and being like, sweet, we get to raid the shop and we can take whatever we want, but then it's like damaged and stuff, so there's not like that much good stuff, but still stuff. But yeah, I really liked having more backstory. I know Percy kind of takes a little bit more of a backseat this season, but that's fine because like he got so. It was,
first season was basically his season.
Exactly, and kind of Pike too. But then I really like that we get to see more of the relationship of like how Grog and Pike met, like why they knew each other before. We get to see this family dynamic between the twins, and we get more cool, casting cameos. Like we got Billy Boyd playing Garmile, who is that like weird fairy character when they get the
they're going to the vestige. They go and get the bow vestige.
Yeah. So
and then let's not forget about Thordak being voiced by the great Lance Reddick. Oh my God, that voice! He's such a perfect voice for a dragon. Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah, like they do such a good job with casting, really. But yeah, like we even get to learn how Vex got Trinket in the first place. So, and then we have these really cool Sphinx characters. So, and there's this whole part where Scanlan basically defeats the Sphinx. Like what?
God, it's so
good.
Scanlan is a character who just doesn't he's always like the joke. He's the biggest jokester of the group.
He's a bard.
He's a bard. And you think to yourself, if anyone's going to defeat the Sphinx, it's not going to be Scanlan.
Yeah.
And he's the only reason they survive. And he becomes buddies with the Sphinx, man.
Yeah.
That man Scanlan.
It was so funny because like they all kept like taking a shot at him, and I was like, I feel like none of this is gonna work. And they're like getting taken down like one by one. I'm like, well, if they're not gonna do it as a group, I don't see how they're gonna achieve this. And then Scanlan's just hiding, and I'm like, no, how? And then he does it, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. This is gold.
Yep. Yes, it's absolutely gold. And Scanlan has another a moment at the end of the season where you find out a little bit more about his history and what he's been he was up to before he met the group. And like he has a kid that's looking for him and that hates him, and so now he has this character growth moment of wanting to be better, but at the same time he's like kind of still a coward. But he has a great moment where they fight Umbrasyl at the end. He has a couple of Scanlan has a lot of good moments in this season, and that's one of the things I can honestly say about season 2. If you have a favorite character, and I think similar to season 1, but very much in season 2, if you have a favorite character, you get to see that character shine in some kind of way in this season. And Grog is not my favorite character. I'm going to keep coming back to him for a while. But Grog is not my favorite character, but he has one of the coolest, most hype, adrenaline-pumping episodes of the entire season. And you wouldn't even think it because it's Grog. But, like, okay, we were talking about Scanlan, and we were talking about the Sphinxes. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention about that before we start jumping on to other stuff?
I like his beard belt. But
Grog's beard belt, yes. I like the fact that Vex'ahlia gets a broom. Gets a broom that lets her fly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean there's a lot of cool little things. But again, like we talked about when we were, discussing season 1, I get the same vibe. Like I can just imagine like certain things that are happening, like at certain points where I'm like, I can just see this happening at a table playing with my friends, and then this stupid thing happens. Like you almost just can't make this stuff up, except for all of it is made up. But sometimes you get the best stories from just kind of playing on the fly and trying to make these like quick impromptu decisions.
Yeah, it's a testament to the players and to the dungeon master. And I'm sure that, they obviously refined some things so that it could work within the context of a show. But it makes for a very exciting story. And the overall plot, which we haven't really discussed too much, but the overall plot of season 2 is to find these legendary vestiges, which will grant them the power to defeat these dragons. And each of these vestiges, there's a couple of vestiges, and you get the sense that each of these vestiges are going to end up going to at least one of the main characters. And I think I might be wrong, I might not be remembering correctly, but I think by the end of season 2, our main characters have 4 vestiges. Scanlan has a sword. Vax has the armor. Vex has the bow, and there might.
Grog has an axe.
No, he has the gauntlets.
The gauntlets, sorry, not axe.
Yes, but you're right. Like so, yeah, and Grog has the gauntlets. So 4 out of the 7 characters have a vestige, and I think there are 7 vestiges. And so like, but the point of the show of the season is to find these vestiges to prepare them for killing these dragons, which is going to continue on into season 3. They do not kill the main dragons by the end of this season. That is definitely a plot point that is carrying over. It's not like season 1 where that whole Percy storyline was done by the end. So I think that the journey is very exciting, but what they also do is that they split the party up, and it allows for these party members to have different things happen to them separately. So Keyleth gets this moment where she gets to go back to her people to help them, and then she gets this huge power up, which is really awesome. At the end of season 1, Grog got the vampire sword, and that starts causing problems. I feel like I almost cried when he stabbed Pike, and I was just like, no way, are they killing this girl? But yeah, and so he has this journey where he has to decide where his strength is. He's asked this question, where does your strength come from? And it's the question that keeps coming back to him throughout the entirety of the season. And so he has to grow. And I feel like for Vex and Vax, so at one point Vex dies, and so Vax basically gives himself to the Raven God, I think is what it's called, or something like that, in order to bring her back. And so she comes back, but it kind of changes him. And so he's kind of going through this thing of not being as attached to her anymore. Like they're always like so, needing each other. And now he's kind of like being pulled away from her. So that's kind of his journey. And he's getting kind of pulled away from everybody, but also learning to accept his new calling as this kind of herald. So all these characters, and Scanlan learning how to be a father and stuff like that, or a better person, like all these characters have their own things that they're going through. And I think that that's like what, outside of the action and the characters just being fun to be around, I think that's one of the things that really carries the season.
I agree. I do enjoy that there are all these different things going on. Sometimes I wonder if it's maybe a little bit too much, but then yeah, but then I also realize that this is only half of the story, because there's obviously going to be another season that may or may not wrap all of this up, but because of all this going on, it was not possible to do this whole thing in one season, because we're getting so much of these backstories and like character developments from all the players except for Percy. But I mean, I'm kind of upset that that there has to be a part 2, because there was no real like closure. Earlier we were talking about the first half of season 4 of You, but that at least at that halfway point where they decided to stop releasing episodes for that season, there was kind of like a closure, like an end point, like a thing for you to just be okay with, like waiting that for the story, next
that story has concluded,
or like there's more there's more to come, but at least have had some sort of closure where it's a good stopping point. Like they don't leave you hanging on something that you've been being had a carrot dangled in front of you the entire time. There's a lot of like loose ends that need to be tied up next season. And like, I'm
True.
just hoping that I remember everything next season. And I think that's kind of why like every season is sort of self-contained with, your typical show. Probably
Hmm.
for this reason, because when you come back to it, it's like, what's happening? What's going on? So like, obviously we're gonna have to watch this season over again when the next season
I
comes out.
mean, oh my
So
God,
I
God
don't.
forbid that
Yeah.
we have to watch season 2 of Vox Machina ever again. That's so painful. I wouldn't want to do that at all. I probably won't do it like right after we're done with this show.
But
So,
yeah,
yeah.
so I kind of have mixed feelings because of that. But at the same time, I like that I'm getting all these details and information and like, character development and backstories from everyone because I enjoy it. I really like that we get to see all this stuff and like have this world and these people really be built out. And like,
Hmm.
you feel really connected to these characters, and like, I'm excited to see what happens next. I'm sure it's going to be like 100 times more exciting because they're gonna fight the dragons at some point. So it's gonna be crazy, and I'm excited for like figuring out like what's up with Vax, um,
Yeah.
and like, you know how are they gonna fight all these dragons? I think one of them is dead now, right?
Yeah, they kill Umbrasyl. And like that's actually gonna lead that was gonna lead into what I was gonna bring up, where the season not really having like real closure, it didn't bother me that much, only because it reminds me of anime. There have been so many anime that I watched growing up where the seasons weren't like they kind of just like run through each other, right? It's kind of like this long story that's stretched out, but then you still do have seasons, but it's still like there's not so much closure at the it's not like this storyline is done at the end of this season. Like they do have like the arcs, but even like those arcs can sometimes span like seasons once they become anime. um so like it kind of reminded me of that, and I feel like I have the feeling that you have when it's a season 1, more so than when I know that there's going like well when I know, because these things get canceled, but when I know there's going to be more. Like when there's a season 1, I want a self-contained story, because half the time I don't know if I'm going to get something after this. But after it gets to season 2, I'm like, okay, I'm along for the ride. I'm what y'all got to show me. So but I can definitely understand like wanting it to just be kind of like the self-contained stories with a thing that will carry you on to the next one, but feeling satisfied that you don't have to wait a year to get to like this next big to like basically see this conclusion. Um, but one way that I kind of looked at it was like Umbrasyl became such a big antagonizing force in this, so like he kind of is the final boss of this season, and they're able to defeat him, and it's like okay, so we were able to beat Umbrasyl, who was like smart, was going after these vestiges, was working with like somebody that they don't even know that he's working with. And now that they've defeated him, it's like, okay, we absolutely can do this. And now we're looking at Thordak and being like, how are we going to defeat Lance Reddick? Because that man is probably going to be much harder to fight. So, like, I it did not bother me as much, only because of the fact that, like you were saying earlier, there's so much good stuff that we got. I think I would have been more upset if the content that we got in the middle did not feel quality and felt like they were wasting time. Because then I'd be like, why are we doing this? And now we get to the end, and I don't even get to see the end. But like because there was so much high quality like character development and character moments, I just enjoyed the ride so much. So when I look back, I just have nothing but fond memories. I'm just remembering like the moments of these characters, even though you're 100% right. The overall like problem is yet to be dealt with.
Yeah, I'd agree that there's just so much like good stuff that happened in season two. Like, I can't be mad that I didn't get a conclusion because even though I wanted a conclusion, I'm kind of glad that it's not over.
Right?
And I
Give
just
me more Vox.
yeah, and I just like I really liked all the stories that were told and just, the jokes. Like it's just so entertaining and
It
fun
really
to
is.
watch that it almost doesn't matter that there was no conclusion yet. I mean, it does. Like, I do want to know what happens, but, like, I also want more. I'm always going to want more. Like, after this story is done being told, I'm going to want another season. So,
Yeah.
like, the fact that it's going to keep going on and on is exciting.
And I've been hearing rumblings that they're going to get their second campaign animated, the one that they did after this. So, and that's the one that my roommate is more familiar with, and she says this. It's also, excuse me, very good. But these voice actors play very different characters than they do in this campaign. So I'm
Yes.
kind of curious to see how that pans out. I mean, are you also familiar with that
I'm
campaign?
not very familiar with it, but I've seen some of it. I saw the introduction, like the first
Okay.
episode, and I've gotten some spoilers. Uh,
I see.
so it's still not enough for me to like know what to expect completely, but
Hmm.
but it's true. Like they play very different people, and so much so where like I didn't even know who they were playing before
Oh, that's
because their
interesting.
voices
Okay.
are so different and their characters are so different. Oh, I mean, I knew who Grog was and I knew who Scanlan was, but like the other ones,
Hmm.
I was like, wait, who's who? Because I didn't know what their
Okay.
faces looked like, only their voices, but they were using different voices. So
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I should really check out Critical Role at some point just to kind of just see some more of how they do it. But I don't want to. I should watch things we've already seen. I don't want to watch things that could potentially spoil me in the future. Um,
yeah, that's true.
so, one thing that I do want to talk about, we talked about a lot already. I kept coming back to it. I do want to talk about Grog briefly because it's important to me for me to mention it because Grog is not my was like my least favorite character, and that's not to say I did not like Grog. It's just to say that if I had a character ranking of these seven characters, someone has to be at the bottom, and that would be him. Um, yes, for me, because I love Percy, Vex, and Vax. Like those are like some of my ride or die people right there, and then is Pike is just something special. So this crew would be dead like 10 times over without Pike. But that being said, like Grog, I thought he was funny. He's fun. He's a little bit of an idiot. Sometimes he feels like Drax um from
I
Guardians of
like
the
Grog.
Galaxy.
I think Grog is my favorite.
I mean, and you know what? After season two, I'm a believer because this man he loses his muscles and like part of his thing, like I mentioned earlier, was finding where his strength comes from. And yes, it is one of those power of friendship moments, but it's important because he always thought that his muscles were his strength. He always thought that his axe and his ability to fight was his strength. So when he gets asked and beaten down over and over again, where does your strength come from? That's when he had to give up that blood sword, which is why he lost his muscles. And so when he gets to that moment when he has to like save Pike, it's great. Like it's a great moment when he's just like, yes, my power comes from my desire to protect my friends. And even in that moment, he does not immediately win. He actually ends up getting impaled on a spike, and you think he's going to die. And it's like, what is happening? And that's one of the great things about Vox is that it just puts you on this roller coaster of like highs and lows. And so you're there when you're just like, yo, Pike's getting beat down. You got to do something. Then you're there with like, yeah, we're powered up. Go beat him. Oh no, you're actually about to die. What are we gonna do? And then I think the best moment of this season is that moment when he looks up and says, "Yeah, I have more friends." Vox Machina, f stuff up, and then all of a sudden leads into this amazing sequence where every single member of Vox Machina is kicking humongous amounts of ass, and it leads to this satisfying conclusion where he gets put into the Pokeball and then and then summoned through the air to come down with a crashing victory against his uncle. And I just gotta say, like I did not think that a character like Grog, who I thought was fine, but never really particularly was like pulled towards, would end up being my favorite moment of the entire show. So much that when I think about season two, I think about Grog. The reason I bring that up is just because I want to illustrate how that's what the magic of the show is. It is the ability to have these characters who are vastly different and who can fill so many different roles and can be attracted to so many different personality types. And the person that you think you like the least is going to be the person that surprises you the most in my case. But that could be like for someone else, that could be Pike. For someone, for another person, it could be Vax, because Vax is very surprising in this season too. So that's what I love about the show. No matter who the character is, no matter how much you love them, how much you might not be like drawn to them, these characters are going to surprise you, and that's the makings of just a great story, you know.
Yeah, that was actually it was one of my favorite scenes of season 2 as well. Just being like seeing, the twins just kind of being ninjas up on the roof in the background, and like I'm like, oh, you done it. All of Vox is here. But in that moment too, like when you mentioned Grog was, impaled and stuff, I was actually thinking like, oh my gosh, are they gonna kill Grog? Because remember, this is from D&D, right? So it's not like a regular show where your characters are probably not gonna, like, your main characters are probably not gonna die. That's not how D&D is. You can die in D&D, and so I can completely see that happening. I mean, it's not that easy to die in D&D, but it can happen, and it has happened. So it's happened many times. It's just usually they try, like, it's the DM's job to try not to murder your party. So, but I thought, like, did that happen? Is Grog about to die? About my favorite character about to die right now?
I think that every time a character gets mortally wounded, I think to myself, did this character die in the campaign?
Exactly.
And I think the fact that it is related to D&D is what makes it scary. Because, like, there's been a moment where each of these characters has had a brush with death, and every single time, or almost every single time, I've asked myself, did they actually die here? So I'm always worried. From day one, I've always been worried about these characters. I told my roommate that I expect that at least one of these characters is going to die by the end of season 1. So when I got to the end of season 1 and no one died, I was like, okay, maybe we're safe. And then you see season 2 and people get messed up in season 2. Like, Vex actually does die, but gets brought back, fortunately.
Second wind.
So, yes. That was the main things. I know I've been gushing over this show. I mean, if you guys have watched us, the only other animated show that I've gushed this much about has been Arcane. I have a love of animated shows. I have a love of animation, and I have a love of good storytelling when it's done right. And Arcane and Vox Machina specifically are two shows that really step it up. And that's what I love. They show that. I mean, there's plenty of shows out there that do this, but in these two examples, they show you that animated media can be just as strong, if not stronger, than live action media, and can evoke more emotions and more of a physical response than various live action media too. So it's just nothing but praises go out for this show for me.
You forgot Invincible.
I mean, Invincible's great. Castlevania is great. There's a lot out there that do justice to this animated medium. But I just had to call those two out specifically because they touch me like in my heart in a special kind of way.
All right then.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to say to wrap us up here?
No, honestly, Chris, I think you've said it all. All that there is to say.
Listen, Cheryl, the next time we talk about Lord of the Rings, I'll remember this.
Oh, it's a good thing we talked about it already.
All right, y'all. That's what we thought about Vox Machina Season 2. Have you guys seen it? What did you think about it? Did you enjoy it as much as we did, as much as I clearly did? Do you love these characters? Are you aware of like the campaigns on Critical Role? You know what's going to happen? Are you excited to see their other campaign animated in the future? Whatever you thought about it, comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you give us a like, share, subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, but really.